And one. We are live. Hello, everybody, and welcome to your final English CBE video. I'm going to try to keep it as short as possible. It's just going to go over some vocabulary, things that you need to consider as you uh, study for this CBE final. And I will be there, hopefully, at the school, so I'll be able to help you if you have any questions with anything. You know how to reach me. But we're going to just focus on vocabulary, guys. Vocabulary, vocabulary, vocabulary. A lot of this is stuff that you should already know. There's the video lesson right there, so you can click on that, and that always happens. So let me do this to go to the next slide. So here's some vocabulary words that you should be familiar with. Literary terms. An allegory, it's a literary device in which the characters or events represent or symbolize ideas and concepts. So they function in the same way as like an extended metaphor, but an allegory contains a lot of symbols that connect to specific people, ideas, events, whereas the metaphor uses symbols that represents the general universal ideas. And we read quite a few allegories, but if you think of that short story, "And of clay we are made," you have the little girl sinking in that mud pit, and that could be an allegory for life. The things that she went through in those 3 days, how she grew, how the reporter that was with her also began to think about his own life and his childhood. So, like that one little moment in that story that took place just in that mud pit, in fact, can tell you about your life in general. Sometimes when you're stuck, sometimes when you realize you need to move forward, you need to stop thinking about things that hold you back. So these are allegorical tales. I'm a big fan of Star Trek. Star Trek uses allegory all the time because it's out in space, it's using aliens, and they're going to these strange planets, but they're trying to tell you a story about you, even though they're out there in space in the future. So allegory you see everywhere, okay? Everywhere, everywhere, everywhere you see allegory. And inside allegory, there's usually a lot of symbolism, okay? So a symbol is an object that stands for itself and a greater idea, okay? It creates this link. So when you see certain symbols, we see sometimes a cross. A cross is a big symbol that you see a lot in movies. Sometimes it won't be exactly a cross, but it'll be something representing one. For example, in Batman versus Superman, when Superman comes down with his arms stretched out like a Jesus figure, because he's like the savior of humanity, he's out there trying to do good stuff. This is symbolism, okay? There's a lot of religious symbolisms in movies and books, but there's a bunch of symbolism like in Antigone with the black birds. If you see a black bird show up in a story, bad news, whether it's a crow or a raven or anything like that. It's different than a sign, okay? Because a sign is something that you take literally, but a symbol, you can take it literally and figuratively. Then we have alliteration. That's the use of the same beginning consonant sound in a line or a verse, like Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers. Can you say that 3 times fast? So this is alliteration, or Sandy sold seashells by the seashore. Of course, these are tongue twisters too. Subtle alliteration is nice. When you're writing something, it gives what you're reading a nice cadence, and especially if you're speaking what you're reading, like a poem. So poems are full of alliteration because it'll give it a nice flow, a free flowing fluidity, we could say. Allusion. What is an allusion? It alludes to something. Okay? So, for example, he's a real Romeo with the ladies. Okay, so this alludes to Romeo and Juliet. You get this idea that, okay, he's a guy that is able to charm easily, is able to have women fall for him, or maybe men too, fall for him. Oh no, this is with the ladies. Okay. Easily. So an allusion is a figure of speech that makes reference to people, places, events, or literary works directly or by implying them. It is up to the audience to make the connection. We have sometimes we have something close to an illusion, which are Easter eggs. You see this a lot in movies where they'll mention something that brings up something else. It's a sort of illusion too, though. It's much more literal, but there's allusions throughout literature where one character makes reference to another work of literature or something that you, the audience, will recognize and say, oh, okay, I know what he's talking about or she is talking about. Then we have foreshadowing. And by the way, if anybody has any questions about any of these terms, let me know. And I'm going to see if this weekend I can make a Kahoot. I've been really busy, guys, with the end of the year and all the testing and everything, but I'll do my best to make a Kahoot this weekend. And when I do, I'll send it to you. And what is foreshadowing? Foreshadowing is a type of literary device where the author makes a hint towards something that will happen later in the story. By the way, all of these slides I found on Google Images, guys. And they can appear at the beginning of the text or the beginning or the start of the chapter. It encourages you to want to read more and see what's going to come of this. There's a great quote. I don't know who said it originally, but some great director said, if you show a gun at the beginning of a movie, make sure you show that gun at the end. Like, don't just show the audience something and not, and not have it reappear at the end. You're foreshadowing that something's gonna happen. Okay. So writers use this a lot. The best writers are able to do it very subtly, and then you have to watch the movie or read the book again and see, oh my God, at the very beginning they showed that the character was a little crazy. I just didn't notice. So some foreshadowing is very subtle. Some of it is much more in your face. Sometimes if we're thinking of movies, it'll even be through the music. You hear this dun dun music, something's gonna happen. Something bad or maybe something good. This is easy, guys. The protagonist, antagonist. Protagonist is the main character in a fictional story, usually the good guy, not always, okay? We do have anti-heroes, but the protagonist is the one that moves the story forward. He's an advocate for a particular cause or idea. And pro means that it's usually something positive. The antagonist opposes this. He stands against the protagonist, usually the bad guy. Okay? But again, not always, because some stories have anti-heroes. Sometimes the bad guy is the protagonist of the story, and the antagonists are the people trying to stop that guy. But that's difficult to do, so most of the time, protagonists are the good guys. In an archetype, we talked about this in Sophocles' work, Antigone. It's a Greek word meaning the original pattern or model. In literature and art, an archetype is a character, an event, a story, or an image that recurs in different works, in different cultures, in different periods of time. The story of the flood, for example. Uh, we know it in the Bible or the Quran or the Torah as Noah. Noah was in the ark, but you can read the Epic of Gilgamesh and you have a story of the ark in there. I believe that was written in Sumer. And did I say that correctly? It's Gilgamesh, right? I believe so. And we have the same story of the flood throughout different cultures around the world. I forgot the number, but it's either in the hundreds or the thousands. I can't remember now. But you have this similar story that flows throughout, no pun intended, all different cultures. This is an archetype. Sometimes an archetype could be a character type. How many superheroes have dead family, either a dead father, a dead mother. They're lonely. They've been kicked out of their planet. Their home world is gone. You guys know I'm a huge fan of DC Comics. So Superman is an orphan. His planet is destroyed. Martian Manhunter also, he's the only one of his kind. Batman lost his parents. Wonder Woman, she didn't lose her parents, but she kind of like left her home behind. So this is an archetype, things that just keep repeating and repeating and repeating. I believe the Flash also might have lost his mom or his dad. I don't remember with the Flash exactly. I think he lost his dad because that's how he connects to Bruce Wayne. They have this lost dad connection. So, but these are archetypes, okay, that you see over and over and over because they work. Okay, they're things that people can relate to: loss and loneliness and abandonment, but then trying to make something good out of it. Atmosphere is the way that the setting affects the mood or the work. So imagine you start the story in a graveyard or at a birthday party, two totally different atmospheres. It sets the mood, okay, for something. And in literature, you're going to have to use a lot of sensory language to be able to set that atmosphere. If you're watching a movie, it'll probably be with the lighting or with the music. And again, why am I mentioning movies so much? Just to help you see. A lot of times I know some of you may watch more things than read more things, which is not good. You should read a lot, guys. Um, but you see that a lot of these techniques are not just used in books. They can also be used for TV shows, for movies, because they work. They're things that make something interesting. And what is the tone? It's the attitude a writer takes towards a subject. The tone of the novel To Kill a Mockingbird, great novel, by Harper Lee, is humorous, childlike, nostalgic, yet increasingly dark and serious, because we're seeing this very dark story about a black man who's accused of doing something very bad to a woman and the racism of the South, yet we're seeing it through the eyes of a child. So it's a nice juxtaposition, right, of something very adult being seen by the eyes of a very young child, the innocence of that very young child. So it creates a tone. Some tones are comedic, some tones are serious. It depends on the writer, and the language that the writer uses is going to let us know what the tone is. And then we have characterization. That's another way to kind of set the tone because then we're telling the audience about the characters. And we can have direct characterization, which just tells us, look, she was a cheery and upbeat person. Or you can just summarize personality in a line. Or you can be very concise, give very clear details. Some writers are more concise. Some of them go very much into detail, like Stephen King, for example. Indirect, which is what writers prefer. There's a quote that we use in writing: "Show, don't tell." Right? Don't tell me she was a nice girl. Show us. She went across the street to help an old lady carry her bags. So I'm showing you an action that lets you know what the character is like. She's a nice person. So this is indirect. It shows reader the character. Her lighthouse smile beckoned across the crowd. So again, they're describing her smile instead of just saying, "Oh, she was a cheery person." Uh, or you can give the details, like I said, her actions, the way she dresses, and other details. But characterization is important for us to know who the character is. In the video I made about The Alchemist, I talked a little bit about the the plot using a chart similar to this one on the screen. And at the very peak is where you get the climax. It's the turning point of the story. It's when the character has to make that big decision to find out what they're going to do next. How the story is going to resolve. Remember, in The Alchemist is when the boy Santiago turns into the wind. Definition of a coming-of-age novel. Okay, a coming-of-age novel is a story of a person's transition from one life stage to the next. It's a tale of growth, wisdom, insight. So, in a way, as Anne of Clay Were Made is a coming-of-age novel, or not a novel, a short story, because she does have to sort of come of age very quickly as she's about to die. But a better example, I think, would be By the Waters of Babylon, the last short story that we did about this boy that kind of goes on a journey by himself. He kind of goes against his father's wishes because he wants to know what's on the other side of where they live that he's not allowed to go to. And in that action, through that process, he grows up. Okay, so these are coming of age stories. I happen to love Stand By Me. That's an old movie that is a coming of age story, but they're not my favorite types of stories in movies, to be honest. But that one is a really good one. Stand By Me. Stand By Me. I recommend it. And then imagery, kind of sensory language. So we have auditory, it describes what you hear. Tactile describes what you can touch, okay, or feel on your skin. Gustatory describes taste. It's sour, it's sweet, it's acidic. Olfactory, it describes what you can smell. Smells like the Pinedos River. Not a good smell. Okay. Visual describes what you can see. And then we have irony. Okay. Irony is an incongruity between appearance and reality. It is typically found in three forms. Okay. So, something ironic is something that I may not really mean what I'm trying to say. Okay. I'm telling you that I love you, but I don't know, I'm punching you in the face. It's kind of ironic, right? So here's some types of irony. There's verbal irony. It's a little like sarcasm. So yay, great weather, but it's raining. If you see the picture on the screen, the girl is all wet, as is her dog. Dramatic irony is when the audience knows a secret that the people in the story don't. So if you see the picture there's a big shark about to say hello to that kayaker. And situational irony is an event that mocks the circumstances. Nothing is written in stone. So, that's a famous quote. Nothing is written in stone, but it's written in stone. So it's ironic. And then we have simile and metaphor. Remember, we studied these two before, guys. A simile is the one where you're usually going to see like and as. It's describing two things. So on her first day of school, Jane was as cool as a cucumber. Okay? He has a smile like, uh, I don't know, like a million diamonds. I'm trying to make up a simile in my mind right now. That one was a terrible one. But you're going to kind of describe something and use like it as to tell us what that something is. Whereas a metaphor does not use like or as. Noah has the heart of a lion. Okay? She's um what could she be? She's $1 million painting. Whatever. Maybe I'm trying to describe somebody that's very beautiful. She's $1 million painting. Okay. She's like a beautiful painting. Then that's a simile. Metaphor, not so much. Okay. But the way to really differentiate it, guys, if it has like or as, it's a simile because they're very uh, similar. Now, the thing with metaphors, I mean, they're giving a very basic example. Metaphors are nicer because your sentences can be a little bit longer, more complex, and metaphors can tend to do that a little bit better than similes. Similes can tend to be very simplistic sentences. What is a sonnet? It's a 14-line poem using any of a number of formal rhyme scheme, which has an iambic pentameter meter. Remember stress on stress? or unstressed, stressed, unstressed, stressed. Okay, iambic means that the first syllable is not stressed in each of the feet. The groups of syllables in poetry, the second one is stressed. Pentameter means there are 5 of these feet. Meter is the rhythm of the poem. You guys know sonnets because I know you studied them with Mr. Gibson or Tim. And what is a motif? We're almost done, by the way, guys. What is a motif in fiction? A motif is a dominant or recurring idea in artistic work. So actually, I should have put this together close to archetype. Just that a motif is something that keeps repeating. It's similar to theme. Themes are abstract, like beauty and power, but a motif is concrete. Gifts, shipping, mistaken identity. Repetition creates cohesion. One example of motif of the One Ring's corrupting power of the Lord of the Rings. So we see that this ring is capable of doing this throughout the story of Lord of the Rings, throughout either the 3 books or the 3 movies. I recommend both. But we can have this idea of corruption uh, going even outside, an object that corrupts. We see this in various stories. So it's a motif that it goes outside just Lord of the Rings. And they may also foreshadow events. For example, recurring trains and train rides are motifs that presage death on the tracks in Tolstoy's Anna Karenina. And then my favorite literary device, automatopoeia. Okay, a type of word that sounds like what it describes: buzz, whoosh, boom. We have personification. Is this back memories of ninth grade, guys? Giving human qualities to animals or objects. The stars winked at me. POV, point of view. Who's telling the story? There are 3 ways that you can have point of view. How do you know? Check out how the narrator is speaking. I, me, my is first person. She, he, or her and his is third person. And you, your is second person. Second person is not used as much, but definitely first and third person are used all the time. What is a theme? The theme is the message that a reader takes away from the story. It's what the writer is trying to say about life. It's an idea about people or life, okay? And there can be various themes in one story. Guys, if you have any questions about theme, let me know, but I think y'all know what a theme is. Definition of a tragic hero, again, review, right? It's a character that possesses a defect, a tragic flaw, which is going to bring about his downfall. You guys read a lot of Shakespeare, a lot of Greek plays. They all had, well, yeah, they pretty much all had tragic heroes. So this is where that comes from. And here's some extra vocabulary that you should know for the test. Altruism, okay, is the principle or practice of unselfish concern for or devotion to the welfare of others, helping others, being selfless, thinking about others more than just yourself. Altruism. And apparently it's good for your health to be altruistic. And aristocracy, a governing body of upper class, usually made up of a hereditary nobility. These are the rich folks. Avant-garde, okay, are people or works that are experimental, radical, or unorthodox. And this is in respect to art, culture, or society. Tom Zé is a Brazilian artist that I really love. He's a little avant-garde. Discretion. It's the quality of being discreet, cautious, reserved in speech. Okay? Have a little bit of discretion. Don't tell everybody all of your business. Be discreet. Discretion is awesome, guys. You should learn discretion. And then we have emphatic. It's when you are being very clear and definitive when you express something. Emphatic. Now, this could be very loud emphatic, or it could just be very clear emphatic. Like, this is what I believe, and I'm not going to do this. I was very emphatic about it. To lament, is to express grief verbally. It's not just to cry, but it's actually say, "Oh my God, I'm so sorry that I did that. I can't believe it. Oh, this is terrible." This is lamenting. Okay, to have a strong regret. We see it a lot in poems. Lamentation for the dead. The whole beginning of Sophocles had a whole bunch of lamentation. So that's what that is. Obstinate, very stubborn, hard-headed. You're obstinate. Think of the mule there. Omniscient, having universal knowledge, knowing all things. God is omniscient. But in literature, we use this as a type of a narrator. A third person point of view is omniscient. It can be limited too, but omniscient means it's like I can get inside all my characters' head. So if I'm writing a story, I will say, and she thought this was a great idea. I'm the narrator. I know. I'm like God in my story. And I also know that he thought this was a terrible idea. Limited is when I only know what's going on inside the. So talking about the characters, but from a third person point of view, but I'm only really focusing on one main character. So guys, keep calm and break a leg. You're gonna do fine. What I want to do now really quick before I move on is I'm gonna stop sharing. There I am, guys. And then I'm gonna share again. But this time I'm just gonna share this right here. Texas Tech University High School Study Guide. Okay, so you guys all should have gotten this in your email. And I do think it's important that you pay attention to a few things on here. One is to prepare for this test, you may want to look at these Texas Essential Knowledge and Skills, these texts. It's at the bottom of this page. I'm not going to go through all of them because there's quite a lot. Your questions are going to be graded based on this. Uh-oh, there's my neighbor's dog. We got the reading assignment, okay? In Antigone, the function of the choral, of the chorus, right? They kind of help tell the story and tell us about what characters are thinking or give us their opinion on the characters. Archetypes comes from there, mythical themes, famous quotes. The Alchemist really deals with plot and character. Okay, Daybreak in Alabama was the short poem by Langston Hughes, and Of Clay We Are Created was the short story by Isabel Allende, and By the Waters of Babylon by Stephen Vincent Benet, another short story. Study topics. We just talked about these right now. Okay. In the vocabulary. You will answer questions about mechanics and usage. You may want to review your grammar skills. Be familiar with rules of capitalization, guys. Beginning of sentences, capitalize. Names, capitalized. Proper names are capitalized. Punctuation, your periods, your question marks, your commas before and or but. Or if you have a list of things, you may want to put question marks, question mark before quotations. Okay, so she said, comma, quotation, I love pizza, period, quotation, boom. So be aware of these. Subject verb agreement. He likes, not he like. Okay. She went yesterday, not she goes yesterday. Be careful with this stuff, but I've seen you guys write a lot, so your writing is pretty good. But just think about this, because you will have to write an essay, which here they're saying it's approximately 1.5 to 2 handwritten pages. It's not on the computer, handwritten. Tips for good writing. An interesting title that reveals the main idea. Neatness counts. Remember to double space typed papers. Well, you're writing, so use black or blue ink for handwritten ones. Try not to use you in your writing exercises. My high school English teacher told me this, and I do it to this day. When I read, when you use drugs, you hurt yourself and your family, I feel defensive. So use different words, like when a teenager uses drug, or when one uses drug, when a person uses drugs. I'm glad they said this. This is actually really cool because I don't remember the other school saying this, but I remember this from 10th grade high school. My English teacher would give us points off if we said you. Because he's like, why are you talking to me? Why are you telling me to stop using drugs? So when teenagers use drugs, when people use drugs, state your opinion as a fact. Avoid saying, I feel that. I'm right here, guys. Or I think that. Just say, this character was very interesting because, okay, not I feel that this character was interesting, in my opinion, okay? When you're speaking, sometimes it's polite to do this. That's why people do it, but it's unnecessary, okay? Maybe every once in a while you do it, but it's unnecessary because it's your opinion that you're about to give, so you don't have to tell me, in my opinion, I believe. Avoid referring to your essay or to any part of it. Edgar Allan Poe uses Gothic devices in many of his poems. Sounds much better than, in this essay, I will prove that. In the following paragraphs, I will show. Don't do that, okay? Just state what you want to state, okay? Literary devices are very important for literature because boom, boom, boom. Not, okay? Not, I'm going to write about why literary devices are very important in literature, and in the next few paragraphs you understand. Nah, don't do that. Use present tense when writing about literature. The events of a story occur each time the story is read. I think my high school English teacher wrote this because he would say the same thing. Uh, don't use the past. Use now. You're talking about things right now. Be consistent in number. If you start out with a singular subject, the pronouns that refer to it must also be singular. For example, everyone has their own differences that make them who they are as a person. Everyone is singular. There is plural. Them is plural. They is plural. So remember that any word ending in body or one is singular. That's a difficult one to remember, but remember, guys, everyone is, not everyone are. Okay? So you need to make sure you have that agreement. Paragraph indentations should be about a thumb's width, about as big as your thumb, which is about 2 centimeters or centimeters. Elaborate. Give several examples and details for each topic sentence. Back up what you write and proofread. And they do have some sample exam questions. Now, this is not essay questions, it's the exam questions. How will they be? You know, the boy in The Alchemist is successful in his quest. Why? And then you can answer. Okay. In fact, it's all of these. Okay. Because he does find true love, he does become rich, and he does gain wisdom. Literary elements. Her eyes sparkled like stars is an example of what? So the questions on the test are going to be similar to this. It's simile, by the way. Remember the like stars. Choose the sentence with the correct grammar and mechanics. And you have to read very carefully. A crowd gathered around the movie star. Oh, that sounds okay. A crowd around the movie star gathered. Maybe if you are Baby Yoda, but Baby Yoda doesn't talk, not yet. Yoda maybe talks. Actually, Yoda talks more like D. Around the movie star, a crowd gathered. A strong Jedi you will be, right? That's Yoda. We don't talk like that. So B and D are definitely wrong. A crowd gathered around the movie star, but what's this comma doing here? So guys, remember your process of elimination. This is the best answer. Reading skills. So then you're gonna maybe have to read a short paragraph, and then they're gonna ask you about the paragraph. Remember a good technique, read the questions first and then go back. In this passage, the word regards means, and then you go back, what is regards? He had a weak point, this Fortunato, although in other regards he was a man to be respected and even feared, in other aspects and other regards. The passage is told in what? It's the third, second, or first person. Well, I see a lot of I's here. Well, in the beginning here it says he, so maybe it's third person. I see another he. Is it third person, guys? But in a matter of old wines, he was sincere. In this respect, but now, see, you have to read a little bit further to say that, to see that. Myself, okay, so it's first person. So be careful. Just because something is saying he, you think it's third person, but you got to read more to realize that, I can talk about he, so I saw a nice guy. He was walking down the street. Okay, so I can use he in first person. And then you have your essay. Here they give an example, discuss the use of archetypes in the play Antigone using specific examples. And there's the answer key. And guys, at the very bottom, this is where they give you your text. And I'm not going to go through all of this, but it's basically what they're looking for. The comprehension of text, uh, uh, determine the meaning of grade level academic English, analyze context, infer word meaning through identification, and blah, 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 blah. Okay? It's a whole lot of stuff, and I'm not going to read it all. You can. Guys, that's it. I hope to see you on the 18th. If you have any questions, you know where you can find me. I love you guys so much. I know it was a difficult year, but we're almost there. Goodbye and have a really good day. Bye bye.